We will now go over manual scoring of the SOSI. In order to manually score the SOSI, you're going to want your record form, you're going to want your manual, you're going to need a ruler and a pencil. The best way to go through and manually score the SOSI is to work your way through the tables. All the tables are in the appendix. For SOSI, they're in Appendix A. For the COP, they're in Appendix B. Now if you look, Table A1 and Table A2 are exactly the same, with the exception being that Table A2 is done by age, which I find much easier. So I always start with Table A2. So let's get started. I've administered the SOSI on a little boy who is 6 years, 4 months. And I've got his scores already entered into my record form during my administration. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and put his best times. So for item 5, his best time was a 2. Item 6, it was 20 for item 5, 2 for item 6, 5 for item 7, 1 for item 8. And I'm just going to go through and enter his best times. Now this is something that I would do probably maybe during the administration as well. So this might already be done for you, or you might already have this completed. And here he had 0 rotation, and that is his best attempt. 0 rotation was his best. Now, I started with item 5, and in his first attempt he received a score of 0, but in his second attempt he received the max score of 20. So I did not need to go back and do items 1 through 4. Thus, I'm going to give him the max score for items 4, since I did not have to administer those. Okay? Now, remember what I said. You're going to want to work your way through the tables. And I like to start by table A2 because it's done by age. And if you can see here, here are the score conversions, table A2. Now, this is for a 5-year-old, so I'm going to need to go to the 6-year-old table because my little boy is 6 years old here. And what you're going to do here is you're going to look at the best time for the item. So for item 5, he had a best time of 20 seconds. And you're going to come over here, item 5, he had 20 seconds. His converted score is a 2. So I'm going to put a 2 right here. His best time for item 6 was a 2. 2 seconds here, when you convert the score converts to 0. 5 seconds for item 7. Over here, 5 seconds for item 7 converts to a score of 0. And 1 second for item 8. Again, that converted score gives you a 0. I'm going to add these all up, and he got a 2. So these are the converted scores for the item, but his item set score for heel to toe was a 2. Working my way through, item 9, his best score was 18, and it converts to a 2. Item 10 is a 4. 4 seconds is here, so it converts to a 0. Item 11, 4 seconds, that actually gives him a score of 1. You see that? There we go. And 2 seconds was his best time for item 12, and that gives him a score of 1 for this one. Add those all up, and we get 4. For shoulders, 0 degrees of rotation. Here you can see 0 degrees for items 13 and 14. The converted score is 2. So a 2 and a 2 there, add those up, and he gets a 4. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to do that for all of my different items. Then when I'm done with that, I'm going to put that information into these charts in the beginning here. Okay? So remember, we said Romberg, he had an 8. And I'm going to go ahead and give him these max scores of 25. Okay? Then I'm going to look the item data. They're asking for item data here. that is their best time. So he had 20, 2, 5, and 1 for items 5 through 8. So it was 20, 2, 5, and 1. And here they're asking for the item set, heel to toe. What was his total score? And that was a 2. A 2 there. Okay. And so remember, now looking at standing on one foot, it's 18. We're looking at those best times, 18, 4, 4, and 2. And the standing on one foot, that item set total score of 4 is what gets placed here in this box. For shoulders here, you can see that they're asking for the converted score. This one's slightly different. So the converted score is the score of 2 right here. So we're going to put 2 and 2 here, and the total for shoulders is a 4. And they're asking for that converted score in 2 locations, here for shoulders and again here for slow ramp. So just be mindful of that. And I'm just going to go through and put the rest of his scores in. Now, the stride jumps happen at 7 years old. This little boy is 6. So those were not administered to him, and neither was high kneeling because he is not 7 yet. And so his jumps score was 2. I'm just going to go through and add the rest of his data in. And you have to be mindful to make sure to carry that information over correctly. Remember that converted score for slow ramp goes right there. And remember, this little boy is 6 years old, so ball against wall is not administered. Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to add these items at total scores. And I'm going to add this up, and this equals 20. I'm going to bring that 20, I'm going to put it right here. These get added up, and they're 18. So 20 plus 18 gives us a score of 38. So this is his overall total score is 38, which is the sum of the item set total scores from this page and from this page. I'm going to take that 38 and I'm going to put it in the front page there because that was his overall total score. So we've already gone through table A2, getting those converted scores and putting that information in the charts in the beginning of the record form. Remember, work your way through the tables. So I'm going to keep going. Table A2. And we get to table A3. And it says raw score to standard score conversion. So we have a raw score of 38. We're going to get his standard score. And remember that he is 6 years, 4 months. So 6 years, 4 months is going to be this column. And the raw score is 38. We need to get to the next page. So 38 is his raw score, and his age is 6 years, 4 months. So he has a standard score of 90. Okay? Remember, work your way through the table. So that was table A3. Let's go to table A4. Now we're looking at confidence intervals. For this one, I'm going to do a confidence interval of 90%. And for 6 years old, and 90% confidence interval is 9.87. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that 9.87 right here, just so that I keep it. And what you're going to put here is 90 minus 9.87, which equals 80.13. So this is 90 minus 9.87. And then here you're going to add it, 90 plus 9.87. And that gives you a score of 99.87. So the confidence interval scores are between 80.13 and 99.87. Remember to work your way through the tables. That was table A4. And we're going to go to table A5 now. we're going to convert his standard score to a percentile rank. So his standard score was 90, and the percentile rank is 25. So he scored in the 25th percentile. Okay. Again, work your way through the tables. Now we're going to look at individual item interpretation by age. So again, this little boy is 6, so we are going to go to the 6-year-old table. And we're going to start to look at these scores. Okay, and what you see here is scoring at less than 15th percentile, scoring between the 16th and 24th percentile, and scoring in the 25th percentile or greater. That kind of corresponds to the red, yellow, green. Red being very alarming, very concerning, yellow being cautionary, and green being within the norm. So if you're looking at all these items, remember, we gave him the highest score possible for items 1 through 4, which puts him, items 1 through 4 with the highest score possible, that puts him in the green. So we're just going to go through and kind of come our way down with the green there. We're going to skip the row that has the item set total score. Be mindful of that as you're completing this form. For item 5, he received a score of 20. And item 5 here, score of 20, puts him in this green category, above 25th percentile. So I'm just going to put a check mark there. Item 6, he had a score of 2. So item 6, 2 falls within the 0 to 3, which is in this red category, less than 15th percentile. So I'm going to put a mark there in the red. Item 7 has a score of 5, and I'm going to come over. Item 7 has a score of 5, again in that red category. And item 8 has a score of 1. Item 8 has a score of 1, again in this red category. Again, be mindful of jumping over this row that has the total scores. Okay? So then I'm going to go to item 9, 18, item 9, and a score of 18 puts him in the green category. So I'm going to put it over here, check mark over there. And item 10 is a 4, puts him in the red. Item 11 puts him in the 4. And if you look here, it puts him in the 4, it puts him in the green category. However, I make note that there's no possible way to get yellow. And I just put a little dash there for me to know that there's no possible way to get a score in the yellow. This is more for interpretation later. And a score of 2 for item 12 puts him in the yellow. I'm going to skip over this row. Score of 2 for items 13 and 14 puts him in the green. And one thing to note here, again, I'm going to skip over this item score, or the total for shoulders, and I'm going to go to skipping. Item 5. He scored 0. He had 0 skips. And so for item 15, he falls in the red category. Okay. Jumping jacks, he scored 3. He's in the green. And that's it for this page. So I'm going to go through and add in the rest as if we were doing that. One thing to note, for item 24, he scored a 0. And a score of 0 for item 24 puts him in the yellow category. That's where the score fell. But there's no possible way to get into the red. So I make a note that there's no possible way to get into the red. So this cautionary for me becomes a little bit more alarming. It's just for me to know, okay, this really could fall into the red. There's just no possible way to get into the red there. And so filling out the rest. So for slow ramp, he fell in the green. For sequential finger touching, he fell in the yellow and then the green, and then everything else was green. Okay? And remember, you want to work your way through the tables. So that was table A6. Working my way through the table, table A7. Now we're going to look at it at the item sets. So 6 years old is going to be this chart, and a score of 8 for Romberg we know was going to be in the green, and this is where I'm going to put there. We're going to start to fill in these rows now. Heel to toe, he had a 2, so that put him in the red. Standing on one foot, a score of 4, put him in that green category. Shoulders, lining up shoulders, he had a score of 4, and that put him in the green. And for skipping, again, he had a score of 0, and that put him in the yellow category. And again, to make note that there's no way at this age to get into the red. So I kind of just make a note of that. And then, let's see, we have series of jumps with a score of 2, which puts him in the green. And nothing for high jump. Now I'm just going to go through and add in the rest. Again, for extension, there was no way to get into the red. It fell in the yellow. For flexion, he fell into the green. For ocular, he fell into the green. Slow ramp was green, and dido. And sequential finger touching was green. Okay? So we have that information now. Oh, and for projected actions, he was also in the green. Okay? Now that we have our charts filled out, the next thing you're going to want to do is take a look at them. And the first thing I do is anything that falls into this red category here, you're going to circle the corresponding areas of concern. So this one is red. We put a check mark here, and that is related to postural control, vestibular, and probe. So we're going to circle those. And I'm going to do that again for this one. This one's just postural control, and this one is postural control and vestibular. Here. Now, if the item set is in red, there's nothing to put over here, but what I do is I tend to just circle it in red, just so that I can be mindful of it, that it is in red. And we've got a red one here, so I will circle this one, and I will circle bilateral motor coordination. Okay. Here, this one's red, and maintains is also gets circled. Okay, just double checking, make sure I've got everything filled out. I'll put my dashes here just so that I can kind of make sure that those don't need to be filled out, and everything else. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to count the number of circles that I have. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 under postural control. Under motor planning, I only have this one that's circled. So 1 there. For vestibular, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 for vestibular. And for probe, I only have this one guy right here. And what you're going to put on this side of the kind of slash mark is what it's out of, how many total. So if you count up all the number of possibilities for postural control, there's actually 15. If you count up all the ones for motor planning, there's 12. All the ones for vestibular, there's 16 in total. And there's 12 total for probe. Okay? These numbers right here, these bottom numbers, don't change from one administration to another. So you can keep those numbers kind of set aside because those don't change. But what we are going to look at now is 5, 1, 4, and 1. These that got circled. for areas of concern, if there is 0 or 1, we're going to mark it as no concern. If there's 2 to 3, then it becomes a mild concern. And if it is 4 or greater, it's a moderate concern. So here we had 5 for postural control, which puts it at a moderate level of concern. So I would check mark that there. If you want to make note that there were 5, you can do that. 1 for motor planning, so that becomes no concern. There were 4 for vestibular, so for vestibular, 4 is considered a moderate concern. And again, if you want to, you can make a note of how many were marked. And 1 for probe, which becomes no concern. Now remember, I said you're going to work your way through the tables. So we were on table A7. Let's make sure we finished everything. Table A8, we're looking at the qualitative information. So for qualitative information, you're going to come over here to this part of your record form. And so for 15A, if you look at item 15, 15A was a no. So I'm going to put an N right here. 16 to 18, both B and C. We're looking at that qualitative information. B and C, those were both no's. So I'm going to put no, no. 16A over here, 16A was a yes. So I'm going to put a yes over here. And you just going through and move that information over. And for this little boy, it just so happened that all of these were no's and all these were yes. I did not know that as I was administering the test. It just so happened that way. And what happens here is you put your score of 1 if it's a yes, 0 if it's a no. So in these, he had scores of 0. And then you add them all up, and it's 0. And over here, 1 if it's a yes, so he scored 1s all down here, and his total is a 5. So then you go back to your table A8, and again we're looking for ages 6. So for fluidity, he had a score of 0, which puts him in this red category, less than 15th percentile. And for assuming position and copying body positions, he had a score of 5. Here, remember, age is 6, and that put him in the green category, 25th percentile or greater. Transferring this information over, the red category is a moderate concern for fluidity, and for assuming position, he was in the green, so that is no concern. Okay? And remember, we want to work our way through the table, so let's keep going, see if there's anything else. And there's nothing else for the SOSI scores. So the manual scoring you have completed for the SOSI. I like to bring over my information from the COP just so that I have it all in one place, and you'll see that in another video. So I have that there, and I administered the PRN, so I've got his score there, and that helps me with my interpretation as I'm looking at all this information. I tend to look at these tables and charts and what it's influencing, where he fell in the red categories, as well as I'm looking at that overall score and the percentile.